So I call the meeting to order. It's 5:32. Mike, do you want to lead us in? Oh, no, sorry. Roll call.
You need some roll call?
No, I don't have Awesome. Here. Janice Baker. Here. Pat Stone. Here. Jim Delap.
Here.
Mike Baker.
Here.
Lonnie Rainville.
Here.
Tom Trotter.
Here.
Okay, now Mike, you want to lead us in?
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, move on to item 4. Consent agenda. Regular meeting minutes and preventive maintenance report. Has everybody had a chance to review?
Yeah.
Any questions or amendments?
Move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Kat, second by Mike. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, oh, Sherry's not here.
She's not here
Okay.
tonight. No.
Or is somebody going over the financial report, or do we want to look at it, or? Is this for our review then?
Oh, it's for our review and everything is falling into alignment where it should be.
Pretty good.
This is a take one capacitor.
It was just past the first quarter, right? The 4 months, right? The whole September.
Yes.
Any questions or comments on the financial report?
Yeah. I do.
Okay.
You can hate me, this is all new to me, so
Alright.
I've been looking at it, and one of the things that bothers me more than anything else. Is the IT in every single category is way over the budget. And I want to know. Why is that? I mean, I realize, I know that there was new tablets were purchased, and that's gonna be part of it, but in every category. We're looking at the third month, so you shouldn't be more than about 30% over budget.
What it is the cost of the software. There's a yearly cost of software, which is averaged out in the budget over 12 months, but it's paid all in 1 month. And so, but that's. split
So in the
between-
para, then under 124-330 IT maintenance and software. Which was budgeted for the year with $365.45. Excuse me, was used, but it was only budgeted at 150, that's 243.03% over budget.
Okay, which one are you looking at?
This is
Page
under
3.
para, under
Prepared
page
township.
3. The year total is 365.45. Budgeted was 150.
Okay, so what happened there is we had drivers that were driving demand response, and we only had 2 paratransit drivers. When we were able to get dispatch to start scheduling correctly with the paratransit rides within the paratransit service area, and the dial-a-ride rides are outside the paratransit service area,
Okay,
it changed the ratio of drivers. So we now have more drivers that are driving paratransit within the service area.
okay.
And then, so the other one, the demand response one, would be lower than anticipated.
And also, like the cell and tablets, and each one of those
Mhm.
is pretty high. I know that you have previously said that you had to buy new tablets, and so is that done the same way as averaged out over 12 months then, and that's why it looks high on one month and another?
It should be about the same every month, but where you'll see the discrepancy is with the demand response in paratransit.
Okay, so
Because the number-
it's the changing in that is what's causing it to look bad.
Yes,
Something else I saw, which is printing and copying, you know, is this year we're over 41%. So what is it, we're having more copying than normal? Or are they charging too much? You know, I just see, you know, I'm just looking at it in new eyes. I haven't seen it before, and I'm just questioning it, you know?
yep. No, those are things that we've been talking about too. We own the printers that we have.
Uh-huh.
And so we have two main printers up here for everyone's use. That anybody can print to for the higher volume jobs.
Okay.
Yeah, and or ones that have to be color or something like that. But then each one of us that has confidential information that we work with, we also have a printer on our desk as well.
Okay,
So the cost of replacing print cartridges
okay, all right. I'll
is
make a
higher
note.
than what it has
Uh-huh.
been, yeah.
Um. Here's something like under the call center, under utilities. Would be 65%, 65.18% for this year, budgeted 800, you know. Budget was $1,300, we've used already 847.35. So is this, I believe you had to use it, replace some flooring or roofing or something like that, you know,
I can't answer that question.
okay.
I do not know, but I do know that what Sherry can do is she can pull it up and she can pop that one open and it'll show everything that's been expensed to that. So we can
You know,
answer that question.
I guess I'd like to see that, you know,
The more expanded version.
well, yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be on the budget committee and I have never seen anything. And so I have to question it, and this was, here's something, under medical transport, 1-30, a $4.95 incentive bonus. There was about nothing budgeted, but it's still $1,592. Is this something new that was just unexpected?
Yes,
Okay,
it's a combination of things. When the cost of fuel was rising so quickly, and the federal government hadn't changed the reimbursement rate yet. And a lot of our volunteer drivers were struggling. We added an incentive of $1 per ride. So it was just a little extra. So if they did 10 rides in a day, that was $10 for the
Right.
day. If they did $25 or 25 rides in a week, that would be $25. And it's for all of the volunteers that
Okay.
that's going through.
yeah, so, you know, I'm new to this, and so
All good questions.
I've got to ask the question, I just don't know.
No, they're all good questions, and I can answer all of them except for the utilities and call center.
Yeah, I mean, some of that is, you just have to see the spreadsheet and see where it is, and
Yeah.
so, okay, that's good, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on the September financial report? I will take a motion to approve.
Move to approve as presented.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Mike and a second by Jim. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, motion passes. Moving on to public comment for on agenda items.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm Matt Grosher with Umpqua Valley Disabilities Network. And we also used to be part of the transition with transportation. Doing dial ride along with several other providers. But I'm coming first to give everybody a heads up. So currently, the city of Roseburg's in kind of a, they call it a crisis situation regarding parking. And we have people trying to get things ready for the Veterans Day Parade. Right now,
you have parking areas that are now getting set up for 2 and 4 hour parking for permits, and the city doesn't have permits set up. They don't have an option, they don't have a price, so they're not doing things in a comprehensive way. So that's gonna run right into Veterans Day Parade, and where the heck are people gonna park? So. An idea has been getting circulated around in our disability circles. As far as, since UPTD is not going to be running at full capacity. Maybe there should be some buses set up, maybe this could be a great coup for UPTD to provide this to the city of Roseburg. And the Veterans Day Parade Committee. To provide transportation, very much like the fair. You have them stop at certain points and then bus them in to a point, drop them off, and then they can come and attend. Otherwise, they're gonna run into the whole parking fiasco that's currently going on.
Don't federal rules prohibit transit from being used as a shuttle?
As
Yeah. Could you check Matt with the school district? Could you see if they can do the buses, school buses like they do at the fairgrounds?
The school buses are fine for general population, however, people with
But not with
disabilities
the.
is an issue.
Yeah.
The only outfit that has those vehicles would be UPTD here.
Oh. And Portland, TriMet does shuttles for the Timbers and games. Do a special service.
This would be a special event.
Lane doesn't do it like you will use.
Yeah, and maybe it's not called a shuttle. I mean, bus drivers and we all call it shuttle. But they do a special service just for like events like that.
Yeah,
And,
I think.
The
I-
Timbers, they run specific buses just to go between the gym,
Right.
not the gym, but the stadium and various points.
When we were offering to help people move during the fires, the big fires a couple of years ago, was that not almost like shuttling?
Over to Hudson.
Now,
Can we have the same thing?
we have federally owned vehicles and they can actually require us to provide service with them when it's a federal thing like that. Yeah.
Well, I think the block downtown during Veterans Day Parade is an emergency.
Well, how's TriMet do it then with the Timbers games? That's just a
Mhm.
sports thing.
Well, it's not just Timbers, it's, Blazers and.
Well, the Blazers they usually don't do shuttle buses. I used to drive up there for them. So like, I did the train, do they do shuttle trains, like additional train service, but they actually have dedicated buses that they're not in regular routes or anything.
My run is a special route.
Yeah, they just do the bus as a special route.
Mhm.
And there's like a map that they give you a paddle and everything. And you just go on a certain route just for the Timbers game.
And this is just one situation.
Yeah.
But in the future. So another thing to kind of add into this next is that I'm also tied to the Oregon State Independent Living Council, which is connected to vocational rehabilitation.
Sure.
And they recently had focus groups. And there was a focus group here. And we met at the Elks Lodge. There were about 20 people that showed, including care providers, consumers, and a couple of staff. And in this conversation, basically the focus group was asked, what are some of the challenges? One of the biggest challenges is having available, accessible transportation. And this is to get to events that are either medically related or non-medical. And cost was also considered a factor. There are a lot of people that if they're using Medicaid transportation, for example, that means their personal allowance that they get is not very much. And every single dollar counts. So if they're being asked to take a $1 ride without guarantee of a return or pay $2 out, and they really don't have that for their budget. And then on top of that, we have people that do regular appointments. And other setups need to be provided. But that has gotten now the notice of, like I said, at the state level. And so there are already things being talked about, and right now, this would be a key point where UPTD could be in the forefront and start working on some measures to make things more accessible. when Dial-A-Ride was around, we had people that could either pay, provided, through a donation, but not be obligated. And these were people going to medical appointments. So right now, all we deal with is MTM. And that's okay, but they're outsourced. And they're what, Missouri? So they don't have any real skin in the game with local services. They're getting paid to do a job. What I'm suggesting is that we have a group of people that are not getting served appropriately or completely. And we need to really consider this. These are people who are elders, who we should respect and care about. Injured veterans that we should also care and respect. And people with disabilities of physical, cognitive, emotional, the gamut. And I feel like this would be one of those opportunities where you can move forward, and this won't be the only event. There'll be plenty of others. I mean, 4th of July, graffiti. I mean, anything else like a Memorial Day parade, maybe.
What's our limitations within the federal, because we're federal?
I think Jennifer, do you
I
have
mean,
information on that?
I was gonna say that there's a huge difference between TriMet and Lane County, is those are mass transit districts. It's actually a really different thing. For instance, they can't provide service outside of their transit area. We can. So like our district, we could get people outside of our district if it benefited the district. So there's different rules. But I did see that Clackamas County, which is part of, I think, this mass transit up there, they call it a deviated fixed route. And so that's what they call it when they want a shuttle service. I don't know if that flies with a transportation district that's in ours, so. But anyway, I just wanted, TriMet is a totally different animal.
Yeah, they are different, but there are exceptions allowed within the charter. You just have to follow the regulations, and I can get that information to you, Cheryl. But you can do special events as a transit agency. There are limitations on what you can charge. I mean, if you did it for free, then it probably wouldn't be a big issue, but there are limitations to how many times you can do it. It's kind of like the government officials. You can take them on trips to locations, but you can only do it a certain amount of time. So I can get you, I'm reading the regulations right now because I have to read it every time because they change it. So I should have that information by the end of the meeting, so I can provide that to you. But there are ways to do special events, but you have to do it within the guidelines of the charter rules.
So I did browse through the charter rules when I submitted our last report, and I can do that. I actually have them available to me.
So who plans the Veterans Day Parade that is a disaster in this? Because it's horrible. I'm not coming to town. Last time I got stuck out by the courthouse for 2 hours. You couldn't move. There was no way to move. So who's in charge of that, and how do we deal with them to make it less of a burden on our individuals that we service?
I'm not sure about that. What I see is the perspective from driving the vehicle. And what I see is the sidewalks from the library to the end of Jackson Street are, the whole sidewalk is full. People set up camp hours beforehand. The streets are shut down usually by 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning to ensure that nobody can park on the street. So actually it's run really well to ensure that there aren't cars parked on the street.
And we don't really run on Veterans Day, right?
No, we haven't run on Veterans Day for.
Yeah, there's
years.
nothing as a committee that we could do about any of that.
Mm.
Really,
No.
maybe it is an individual, concerned individual.
What do they do for emergencies? I mean, how does an ambulance get downtown?
Well, in previous years, they usually have emergency medical services readily available, just like off the block.
They're sitting there.
and local PD also providing kind of supervision and traffic. However, what I picked up from talking to Ace Parking, and they're the ones that are chiefly trying to orchestrate the parking situation and trying to help the city council along. But Ace Parking is reporting that they've already talked to RPD and that they are going to be kind of hands-on group. They will only come in if there's an emergency. And then, yeah, otherwise, they're not gonna be there in a kind of a proactive manner of any type. So, there's that bit of concern there. So, the thing that I'm seeing also as someone who works and part of the day lives in downtown, that events like that are really beneficial, but only if they're done properly. And if you got a parking situation, you have a police force that's being more passive this year than previous years.
Oh, God.
It could go sideways. And I'd rather not see that happen. I want people to come and enjoy it. So I would
Just
say
because we haven't run on Veterans Day in the past doesn't mean that that was the right way to do it.
well, right now, I think some of the things you ran into before with like the congestion that you talk about,
Mhm.
you got people that are looking for parking. And they're trying to figure out where do we park and how close can we get to the action without actually getting in the action. And if you've got a parking situation, well, you just pushed everybody out. So you got people that are already gonna be wanting to walk. It would be a great opportunity to provide a shuttle service that would get people right there and it'd be done orderly.
I guess what I'd say is, Cheryl, can you,
I can look in.
I'd say, can you put, look at the framework, what we can do, and then if it's feasible, we'll reach out to Roseburg and. It's an opportunity, we'll leave it with you to manage that.
Okay,
Yeah, I think the city would benefit from having somebody come in and provide a solution since they're kind of stuck.
I can reach out to Nikki too and see. if
Yeah,
there's-
that's a good idea.
Kind of a way to introduce buses to people is kind of, I guess, why I look at it a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well,
But the trick is getting them, as you said, I lived down here for 20-something years and have been, I get stuck every graffiti, every.
Every time.
right.
It's just getting them there. I mean, it's just, Kane Street, not really is, it's
Not
Kane,
super,
kind of
yeah.
weird thing up by through Old Rose School and trying to find your way back over to Stevens Street eventually and down, and so it's not real easy, but Roseburg toward, maybe Rose Street or something like that and dropping them off somewhere in close, so you could circle back and then maybe back down Douglas and back out. Maybe there's a way to do something like that.
That's actually the only way
Yeah.
to here is to,
End up going on Chadwick.
Yeah, Chadwick, yeah.
Like Hamilton.
No, everybody's got their little parking train, Like
I
some
just
people are
wanted to-
parking over by the old Horizon lot.
Yeah.
Hiking in, that kind of thing.
I just wanted to get out of town after being at a meeting.
Right.
And you couldn't get anywhere from here. You couldn't get out, you
Well,
couldn't get
that's
turned
the
around.
issue.
It is-
If you can't get out, how are we supposed to get people in?
But that's why I said, I think you can, if you were to go to like a Roseburg High School to Washington Road.
If you've got like some
kind
sort
of-
of circulator.
Yeah.
that can go-
Speaking as a person who is disabled and can't hike somewhere, I would like to see something like that, like we were talking about macro transit before, and we can maybe implement something that would, within our parameters, that we could do for people like me who aren't obviously disabled but are, and then people who really are, the wheelchairs and everything. It'd be nice to get them in so they can enjoy everything.
I mean, potentially you could do something like around Redeemers or something where you got all those looking glass apartments and all of that,
Yeah.
when you're gathering some people there. And maybe over at the high school
Yeah.
and,
Yeah, places where there's large parking lots where people are allowed to park.
but there's a lot
And
of
we can
lower
pick them
income
up.
people that,
Right.
might not walk. and go.
And so basically kind of like how the fair and transit
Kind of,
operates.
Something like that.
So you can have the yellow dogs, the big school buses, and you could also have the specialized.
For some events, yeah,
yeah. I'll
whatever
look
makes
into-
sense.
Thanks for bringing that forward, man.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Yes,
Mhm.
Well, and
There's a cost to that too, so determining what that is, and is there a charge or
Yeah.
not?
well, it would benefit, like, for example, Ace Parking, because that puts some of the pressure off of them. The city of Roseburg also takes some pressure. They can actually take a little bit more time to figure out their system with the 2 and 4 hour parking and the permits that they still have yet to put a price on.
Do they actually charge parking on holidays?
They do on weekends.
Yeah.
They
they
do on most
do.
weekends.
Had to take it on the weekend.
I don't think
The
they have
meters
anything
have
on
list
it.
of holidays on them, I think. The meters say what, I thought.
Well, they've actually done away with the
Well,
meters.
a lot of the meters are broken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, they've actually removed the meters.
I did this.
So this is why they're coming up with this new parking scheme that they're only half thinking through right
Got it.
now. Also, the city seems to be very unaware of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the downtown area, if you're trying to get people in and say you get them off the van, the bus or the van, then they still have to navigate through the sidewalks, and things like that. And we've tried to talk to the city about the sidewalks. And they end up just kind of pushing it off on the individual shop owners. And
So it's the Downtown Roseburg Association has some responsibility.
No, so- no, in
Here,
any-
is it?
No.
In any jurisdiction, pretty much the property owner has the responsibility for maintenance of the site.
But that's not entirely true, because I tested that theory out with Mickey Messenger personally.
It's in the ordinance.
Yeah. But it says also, if there are city services, there's that front section right at the curb. Where the meters are, that's the city. And that's where I had an issue with a meter box that was right in front of disabled parking, being a trip hazard.
Even if the sidewalks on public right of way, maintenance is the responsibility of the private property owner,
Okay.
even in the public right of way.
I understand that might be how it's written and cited, however, in practice, that's not how it went down. We didn't have to pay anything for the repair on the meter box. That was the city being inattentive. They realized that they were being inattentive, and they took care of it, put it in.
Well,
the
if it's
meter
their,
box.
if it's their meter box, then it's their meter box, right? And then
Right.
they've got to repair and replace whatever sidewalk that
Right.
goes along with that part. of the
Yeah,
project.
and that was the only part of our sidewalk that was a problem.
Did they need the entire roadway for the parade? I mean, they can go into the roadway a little bit.
Half of the roadway, maybe.
Well, they really haven't done too much around downtown on the roadway. Normally, like around graffiti, they put it in a slurry coat and make it all look nice and repaint everything. 2018, they did some pipe work with Brown Construction, and then they left it with kind of the rough wood. And on top of that, they redirected funds for striping and disabled parking identification on the ground. They diverted that money somewhere else, Stevens, Stewart Parkway, Garden Valley, somewhere. So currently, since 2018, our 2 parking spaces are not painted. You can't really tell, and even the signs are up high and they're small. But that's the city. So this would also be a great opportunity to provide some awareness to the city about what other things that they might need to do to make sure that people are coming downtown and doing it safely. And again, this is a great opportunity. It's multiple fold on this, so I think it would be like I said, I mean, this would be a great chance for people to get some really cool service.
So what's our time frame on this? Because I have no idea.
I think we have 5 weeks.
And is that doable
If
for a big
today's the-
hurricane?
Today's the 10th,
Today's the
parade's
10th,
11th
Yeah,
November.
That's Friday.
Okay,
You also have to get the word out to people too.
It's gonna be maybe a little too tight for this year, because
Yeah.
maybe we can explore for next year.
Friday.
let's see what I can do.
Raise some awareness now,
I
get the
think
ball rolling.
it'd be nice, even if you couldn't get the PR out, to try and have the service,
Yeah.
worked in, just because of the parking situation.
Sure.
People are gonna get stuck. And we're gonna have more congestion, more jamming, think about.
Mhm. And every year it's gonna get worse.
Well,
maybe even just being asked to be at the table during the planning some of the planning meetings, having transit at the table.
It's the county veterans,
Yeah, we put in an application to them, so I think we have their contact information.
Okay, wonderful. Let's
Perfect.
perfect.
do that and have some email updates. on
Okay.
What we're
Any,
covering.
any other public comment? Is Jennifer the only one on
She is.
there? Okay.
I could comment a bunch of comments if you want me to.
You have your own slot on the agenda.
Okay, I'll.
Moving on to general manager report, Carol.
So, I got really good news on our vehicles that we've ordered through Northwest Bus. We have 3 of our Cat B buses, which are the 16 passenger, 3 ADA stations. That are scheduled to go online for their build next month. He said that they usually take about 14 days for the build, and then they get transferred from where they're. I don't remember where they're building them, somewhere in the Northwest or the Midwest, and then they get transferred to Federal Way, Washington, where they finish up with adding in like the cameras and radios and wraps and things like that, and they go through and do the punch list on the vehicle. So we could have them right about the first of the year. He said he didn't have any updates on any of the vans. We still have 3 hybrid vans and 4 gasoline vans that are on order as well. But he did say that he hasn't heard of any of them being turned back or the price increasing like what happened with the order that we talked about last month. So that was really exciting. It's really exciting to see that our ridership for the year-over-year number was at 85% from what it was last year. We're still significantly less than what we were pre-COVID, but big difference for the year-over-year numbers. So I think we're headed in the right direction there. Do you have any questions about any of the ridership numbers?
The only question I had was, how come there's a Mercy paratransit and an UPTD paratransit, but there's usually one paratransit?
Well, because when we got our dispatch to appropriately schedule the rides, I know that we had discussed that a number of times here. The actual number of rides that were being provided within the paratransit service area that didn't qualify was astronomical. So when we got that resolved, then it left Mercy without ridership. And so, but it left us short. We didn't have enough people to cover the number of rides that were being scheduled. So what we did is we took one of Mercy's vans and we schedule paratransit rides on it. But it's kind of like a fill-in. It's 1 day a week and sometimes 2 days a week, but you know, it's something that keeps their vans full because we contracted with them. Yeah, so that's how it ended up being that way. When the paratransit service area became Sutherland, all the way to Winston, then that and the corridor that runs along 99 in between, that just really changed the dynamic, you know. So that's how we ended up with Mercy doing paratransit. Yeah, because we'd asked them to add another driver and then didn't have the rights to provide them. So it resolved it for both of us.
Curious what routes the Cat D buses, so.
So they will do our lifeline that will go from Roseburg to Cottage Grove and then back to Roseburg and down to Wolf Creek to make that connection to Lane County and Josephine County all in 1 day. And do it twice so that people don't get stranded. And it will match up with the bus schedule for people to be able to catch a ride, connect with a ride when they get to Cottage Grove, and also when they get to Wolf Creek, it will be timed to match up with the Josephine County Transit. And we had good ridership when we had the Lifeline going before. We did, that's part of my report also. I had a conference call with LTD, City of Cottage Grove, and LCOG representatives, and they wanted to discuss the Lane Transit or Lane Douglas connector that South Lane Wheels has been doing. And they concluded that the ridership was just so low that they said what they were going to say was it wasn't a not never, but not now. So they're not going to continue funding that service. And especially knowing that we were planning on doing that service, only providing it in a different way. So they did ask questions about why we thought that our ridership was higher than the ridership was for South Lane Wheels. And that's simply because the greater number of rides starts in Roseburg, and they go to a destination in the morning and they come back from the destination in the evening. And the way the Lane Douglas connector was originally set up, if you got on it in Roseburg, you couldn't get back to Roseburg. You would have to schedule a dial-a-ride from Drain to Roseburg. So it wasn't a cohesive way of doing it. So I think they had a grand total of like 62 rides in the entire time that they provided service. So that won't be going anymore after, I believe it is June 30th. So we were planning on doing the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They were doing the Tuesday, Thursday. So anyway, those buses will service that, and they will service the change that we had discussed with a collector for South County. So we'll rework that South County route so that we have a collector that's down there just doing the Myrtle Creek, Tri-City, Riddle, Canyonville, and back. And so it just runs that, and it'll give them, it won't be quite hourly service, but it'll be close, better than what it is now. And then they'll make a connection at probably most likely at the Myrtle Creek stop, and have more of an express service up from there to Winston and on to Roseburg. So it'll provide better service for South County. And it'll allow us to use the drivers that we still have, still provide the same level of service in getting people to and from the Roseburg area. Actually, probably better, because they won't be covering so much distance. And so that's where those buses will go.
Clarification, there won't be any more transport between Roseburg and Eugene.
So right now, the transport between Roseburg and Eugene is through South Lane Wheels on the Lane Douglas connector. Right now, if somebody gets on in Roseburg and they go to Eugene, well, they may have fixed that in there. They just restarted the route.
Because I got really good reports about that.
Did you?
Yeah, that it was awesome and it was the right timing and it worked really well.
Is this recent?
I don't know what's recent.
Like within the last month?
Yeah, it was probably over a month ago.
Okay,
I'm not sure.
so it's just gonna change.
And it'll change so that it's different days or it's different hours or.
So we have had in our STIF plan a project for that connection between Cottage Grove, Lane County, and all the way through Douglas County to Josephine County. We have had that there since 2018, but then COVID hit right when we were getting ready to implement it. The funding that South Lane Wheels approached us to, they asked us to apply for funding for the rural veterans healthcare grant, which we did, and they did a pilot project with that was not much ridership.
A pilot project.
Right. Then they partnered with City of Cottage Grove for STIF funding, which they are currently, that's what they're using to run that service with. So we're not taking their service down. The City of Cottage Grove is not going to continue to fund it, is what the end result of that was. We are going to stand our service up, as we've always stated, as soon as we have the bus.
So we'll have service one additional day a week than they had. Plus you'll be able to go there and back in one day.
Yes,
Are you going all the way to
That is
Eugene or are you going to Cottage?
So they won't be able
Cottage
to
Grove.
go for a while.
Well,
But
not
the-
until July 1st, basically. So
Cottage
Okay.
Grove stop.
sounds like it kind of
And
stays as it is
connected
through
to
June
LPD,
30th.
so
and
they
then
could
it
just
changes
hop on.
On that. and
For this new service, July 1st.
Okay,
So it gets better July.
okay.
Is that
I'll
what,
tell
right? We continue through June and then July, it's the new.
So if we get the bus in January, then as long as we have drivers, then we can stand that service up in January.
Oh, okay.
Because we've already got all of the
We're
training.
having better service for 6 months.
Yeah,
But no service until January,
No,
no, they
it'll
still are
continue.
going Tuesday, Thursday.
Tuesday, Thursday.
That's
Okay.
what South Lane Wheels does right now. Yeah.
But we're talking Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So potentially if it starts in January, you could have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday service
Mhm.
through July,
July.
and then it will just be.
And
Monday,
it'll
Wednesday,
just be Monday,
Friday.
Wednesday, Friday.
Well,
An additional day.
So it'll be good, great for a little bit.
Told you.
well,
And
and
then
we're,
better after.
we're getting ready to go into a new round of grant funding. So we'll be posting a public notice for availability of funds. We put together a grant application for the providers that is extremely simplified because we are the qualified entity, and they are not they're not applying directly to ODOT, they're applying to us. And so we simplified it for them. And so we have the grant application put together. And once the funding availability has been posted, then of course they'll have a couple of weeks to turn in a grant application. We are providing this information directly to all of our providers as well. We're not expecting them to catch a public notice in the paper that they may or may not read, so we're providing that to them directly. And then once the applications are received, we'll have at least one stiff. Well, okay, so that's something we'll have to look at too. Do we want to continue to call it the stiff staff meeting? Because we had done that because we had to have a special transportation advisory committee for 5310 funding. But we also had to have a committee for stiff funding. I guess we do have to continue to do that unless we do it all in one meeting.
I
So
would do it all in one meeting,
that's what we're,
because it really all goes together anyway.
yeah, that's what we're shooting for. And I got the notification for the amounts of the 5310 funding. So we'll be able to do that public notice at the same time as well. And then when we have the meeting, then there will be a recommendation of projects. And with the conversation, having just found out last week that the South Lane Wheels project was not going to be continuously funded, then what we can look at is putting a project forward that is the funding for the other 2 days, and then we could continue the 5 days a week. And just go from there. That way they wouldn't lose that service. And honestly, ridership is always better if you go every single day.
Yeah, they don't have to remember what the schedule is.
Yeah, and there's always the people that call and say, well, I would really love to use your service, but my appointment's on Thursday and you guys come here on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so that's huge. So anyway, once we do that process and have the stiff stack committee meeting, then we can bring those recommendations to the board. The board will approve or make recommendations for changes. And then we'll complete our applications to ODOT. Our applications to ODOT are due a little bit earlier this year. Typically, we've had to the end of January or mid-February, and they are due to ODOT, I believe it was January 15th.
It's better than Christmas. That's what I was
So
thinking
that's
you were
why-
gonna say.
Well, and that's why we want to get the recommendation to the board in the December meeting.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we haven't got enough time, once the board makes their decision, to get our application completely in order. Because it takes some doing. And then, of course, the awards will be announced by ODOT in the March-April timeframe, and we'll work with the providers to do their contracts once we know what those awards are. And then the grants are executed July 1. So we're in that process. So this is the optimal time to put aside money to fund the rest of that project, if that's something that the group wants to do. I think it's a phenomenal idea. But that's just one person's opinion.
One pretty expert person's opinion.
Yeah, I'm the subject matter expert. So anyway, it's been a really interesting month, and do you have any more questions about the report that I provided? Then we have the report that Ron Sperry brought for us. And he has the information about the questions that have been asked ongoing in our group here.
And so I want to apologize, last month, something came up and I wasn't able to be here, but I don't know if we met. I want to introduce myself. I'm Ron Sperry. I've been representing the Transportation District for since its creation, actually pre-creation.
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mike contacted me then, and we discussed some issues and just had some back and forth while the advisory committee was being put together. And so occasionally I'm asked to do some research and actually justify my existence here. So and I think that so I had a version of this a month ago, and then I started looking a little bit deeper into the statute. So there are just so everyone's aware, there are a lot of statutes that control special districts. There's a general one that says you can make them, and then there are 28 special districts allowed in Oregon, and every single one of them has its own statute saying what authority it has. And the transportation district one is a little confusing because it's also part of the mass transit statute. So there are two statutes there, and the mass transit one is ORS chapter 627. It's like the first 3/4 of it, and then they gave us like 7 paragraphs at the end. And so, but there were 3 questions, and the third one was kind of implied. I think it was a question that was asked about, who can serve on the board? Can members outside the district? I actually had a hard time finding this because for instance, mass transit, and maybe Jennifer knows the answer to this, but it appears that you do not have to reside in the district where there's a mass transit district. So I thought that was the statute governing transportation districts. So the first question is, may individuals who are not residents of Douglas County serve as a member of the board of directors for the transportation district? I could not find anything. And then I found it because it is in one sentence in a statute that says, so I've got the short answers, and then if you have nothing better to do with your life, you can read the nerd stuff. But the answer to that is no. Transportation, I go through the analysis of how they're created, but the final answer is ORS 267540. If you got nothing better to do, you can look it up. But it says the governing body of a district shall consist of 7 members elected from the district. That's literally the best they did at large for 4-year terms. It's important to realize, and I put in here that other special districts. So every law that says, okay, so for instance, what we call it a principal act, that says what we can do with transportation districts. Doesn't say really anything about how, other than this, how to elect them. It just says, go look at ORS chapter 255, which is just general elections in the state of Oregon. How those are conducted, the process, the procedure. Other districts actually have all these rules, like if you talk about sanitation districts, school board or school districts, those have in their principal acts really specific things that, you know, you have to be not just an member of the electorate, meaning somebody who can vote in that county, but own property, pay a tax, that kind of stuff. So transportation districts, a little bit looser. So what does it mean from the district? I looked up cases. There's actually a great website, the Oregon Government Ethics Commission has hundreds of letters that they've published over the years that you can browse. I did not find one specifically on this topic. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit on one of these other questions. So I looked all over the place. And so I was able to kind of piece together that, you know, from the district means you're a member of the electorate. I don't believe that there's a requirement that you own property. I don't believe that there is a requirement that you even pay a tax, you know, because property tax is what special districts is supposed to be funded. Most special districts are funded in Oregon through property tax. But it does mean that you must be a part of the electorate. And that just means someone qualified to vote in the county as set out in Article 2, Section 2 of the Oregon Constitution. And I didn't cite that. It's just that describes or sets forth the rule about what it means to be basically somebody who's been registered to vote. So that's about the only requirement. At large, is everyone familiar with that term? It means there are no special districts within the district. So we don't have like a District 3, you know, 1, 2, 3. So everybody on the transportation district board could be from Winston, could be from Middle Creek, could be from Glendale. But other special districts limit that. They break up, you know, they make a 7 each 5, and then you have to live in that area, like the city council, they have wards. So so that's the answer to that. That's the short answer. And like I said, you can read all about the creation of special districts. The second question and the third question were a little bit more difficult, because to answer those, you have to look at what authority special districts have. And special districts have only the authority specifically given to them. So, and I'll talk about that, because there is this clause that says, you know, you have whatever authority you need to accomplish the general or purpose of your district. My job is to spin that to do whatever the heck we want. No, I'm joking. But that's what you see. Like when I took my constitutional law classes, there's this clause in the Constitution that says you can only do what we set out in this document, or if it's really like a serious deal, you can just do whatever you need to do. I mean, that gets used to do a lot of stuff. So the answer to the number 2, or I guess the question, let me pull it up. May spouses serve together on the board of directors for a special district? This was an interesting question, because then I think the question or the concern was this conflict of interest idea. Interestingly enough, the Oregon Government Ethics Commission and the rules that they've populated are only worried about basically 3 kinds of conflict. And that is, are you going to make money off this deal? If you as a public official, you're all public officials. If you take part in an action, is that action going to benefit you, a relative, your business, or the business of a relative? If yes, there are certain disclosures you have to make, and you might still be able to make a decision. That's called an actual conflict, where it will benefit something related to you. And just so you know, relative does not mean household. It's literally anybody we can tie to you, even if they don't have the same last name. I mean, that's the short version, but there's a big long list in it, and so it's comprehensive. A potential conflict is, could it? So that one is, I mean, that's a broad question, maybe, right? But it's the same analysis. Could it benefit your financial interests, your relatives, your business, or the business of a relative? Could it? And actually, would it do something to their detriment is also in there. It's just we don't talk about it as much, but it would be a conflict if something you took part in would hurt somebody else's financial interest in that same circle. So the ethics question, the commission doesn't concern itself with intra or interpersonal relationship issues. It's all about, are we open? Do we disclose all of our financial interests? Do we, are we avoiding, are we taking steps to train ourselves to avoid any actual or potential conflicts? And so what that, and I tried to find something that talked about this. The only thing I can come up with in the is that you as a board, we can submit a form to the ethics, the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, ask for a letter of opinion on this. I think that they will go through the same analysis and say, we don't see any specific prohibition. I didn't find any specific prohibition. The question, I think it's an interesting question because you could form a voting block. I think, there was a comment, there's that potential, totally agree. My concern as an attorney was thinking, well, what if there's only 3 members of a board and 2 of them are spouses and they talk at home? That's a public meeting. Like, seriously.
Exactly.
And so was there notice, so I was thinking more along the lines of the conflict or the ethics question is, let's just, keep it, who's gonna govern that, but really I looked, it does not appear that is a conflict. Because I think the idea is that if 3 or 4 of us were friends and we knew each other socially, that could be a voting block, or if we all attended the same, I don't know,
I think there's an attorney.
polo
general's
club, right?
opinion.
Or what's something ridiculous, right?
I think there's an Oregon Attorney General opinion.
So I found one from 1979 that on a similar issue, but the conflict of interest really starts to happen when spouses are working or colluding together to hide some kind of conflict, some kind of, because I was thinking about this, like, maybe somebody related to somebody whose name is not the same as some, a cousin of one of the spouses, something like that. And so that the next question I felt was implied from this one is, can we make a policy to restrict certain members, or can the board restrict certain members of the community from serving on the board? The short answer is yes. It's super, super limited to the statute. We already did it. You guys are very familiar with it, or last year we did it. It's under ORS 198115 is a statute. So chapter 198 is the Oregon law that says, hey guys, you can make special districts. It's not specific to this one. It just says you can make them. 115 is one of the very first rules under that chapter, and it says if you want, you can prohibit employees of the district from serving on the board. Okay. Now, the way this works is that is a specific power granted to special districts. It's important because the legislature they added that, and case law judges say that we're supposed to presume the state legislature knew when it put that clause in there, it could have added any other requirement it wanted, but it refrained from doing so. So that means only the authority to prohibit district employees from serving on the board. That's all we can do. So that's the general rule. Then we look to our principal act. Is there something in our principal act that prohibits or that allows the board to make a rule or ordinance? There's not. So then it just refers us to chapter 255. You see, yeah, this is fun. Which is just the general election rules. And so I thought, oh man, there's something in there, but that just says how to do it. We can't make it hard for people to vote on issues. There's all the rules about referendums, or for instance, any member of the public could put something on the ballot for next year to make a rule, to force this board to make a rule or ordinance. But it has to be something that we can do. Like we couldn't have make the public transportation district regulate the police, or that would never, right? We don't have authority. So in this situation, the only time we could make that rule is something we've already done, which is to prohibit district employees. Now, I think we talked about service providers and viewing them as employees. I felt like that was permissible. We haven't gotten any kickback from anybody, but we can look at that further, but I felt like that was a good policy, because if you have service providers, that could create a conflict every single time you talk about a funding issue. I mean, literally every time. So then it has to be declared, we follow the steps. And so those are all the short answers. I go into talking a little bit about the ethical issues, and I was surprised to find that I felt like the only real ethical, I didn't mention the other two, there were gifts was the other one. I said there were 3 things that they're concerned about. It's whether you have financial interest in something, your gifts, what kind of gifts. I mean, I think it's limited to $50, and it can't be anything super cool, right? I was on the planning commission for the city of Roseburg, and we got Post-it note, like a little Post-it note thing, and maybe a $10 gift card to Dutch Brothers from the city, hey, thanks for being on the board. It's very minimal. And I have to declare that in my, I think all of you guys have to do that declaration, or you guys don't have to. I had to do a public
Planning
disclosure.
commission, city council, and
Okay.
then no other commission or.
Okay.
has to do that,
Yeah, I had to fill out a financial, saying,
Disclosure,
yeah, did I receive any gifts? Did a spouse, kind of the same questions, did anybody in my sphere gain anything from my position on the planning commission?
That's a whole bunch of Post-it.
Yeah, my kids got Post-it.
So like grandma's had his own.
Right. So I don't know if there were any questions off the top of your head. I just gave you kind of the light version. And so just to recap, no, people have to be a member of the electorate in Douglas County. And I had to look that up as well. So I thought we had a limited region for certain areas because we don't provide transportation to every single place on a regular basis in Douglas County. So I looked up the charter and the advisory committee statement, and the district is as big as the geographical jurisdiction of Douglas County. So it's the entire county, so anybody can be on.
Just unusual, but.
It is, that, right, I thought maybe it was just the, some portions of the I-5 or just the incorporated communities in Douglas County, but it's the whole thing. Spouses may serve together. Generally they're not prohibited, and we cannot create a rule to prohibit them. But I think it might be worth, maybe if we wanted to get our names on an opinion from the commission to ask. Because they do a very in-depth analysis of the rule. And they're kind of worth looking at. If you have a question about, hey, did we do something wrong? I would, I went and I found one that was last June on executive sessions. Yeah, and so I was like, hey, look, there's us, executive session. So it wasn't specifically us. It was another group that had the same question. So I have the website in here, but you just throw in your browser window, Oregon Government Commission or Ethics Commission, takes you to the website, and you can browse hundreds of opinion letters if you have a question. And 99% of them all have the heading, conflict of interest, personal gain, conflict of interest, like there's just hundreds of those. And so,
Do we have to make a formal request?
yes, there's a form.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I would say this, that,
Opinion, you.
yeah, you have to
you
request a
request
written
it.
opinion,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
And
And there's
then
2 types.
It goes from opinion, like if they decide from the opinion that it's something worth looking into, that's what
Right.
it turns into an inquiry.
Does it have to be worded specially, or can we?
No, the
keep it
form-
As vague as we feel,
I think the more pinpoint, the better probably,
so
because,
you have to do it?
no. It's a
No.
form you can download.
Okay.
And so they can decide to do an advisory opinion, which is specific to this group, say, hey, we looked at your situation. And this is what we think you should do. Their opinion letters. Doesn't carry the weight of a judge, but that's where they're telling everybody, hey, we got this question, we want to clarify this rule for everybody. And they publish both. But I think the opinion letters are they have more force and effect. They're the official viewpoint of this commission, whereas the advisory this is only, Umpqua Transportation District or Public Transportation District. This is just for them in that situation. So anyway, any questions, follow up? I will say that in here, something to remember is that we all define ethics differently, right? We all have, ethics means like, it's the values that you have that dictate your conduct, right? I joke with people, evil people who believe in evil and do evil are ethical. That's a debate. We can have some fun with that, right? my wife hates when I say that, as evil people are ethical. Like, so we all have a different idea of like what ethical means. Like is this an honest way to, or is this conduct in line with what we perceive as being right, wrong type thing? That's totally different than the way that ethics is defined under statute. And that's what I wanted to bring up, is that the ethics defined under statute talk about those three things: gifts, personal gain. I'm blanking on the third one. That's almost all what they care about. And so if somebody was inappropriate, that's not an ethics inquiry for that board. That might be something to get out into the public, and when it's time to vote, make people aware of something. I don't know. However, have we had contested seats here?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hope for some more and we can have some fun.
Don't run up in June.
Yeah. All right, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions on Cheryl's general manager report? Okay, Jennifer, now it's time for your comments.
How are my comments? I am inviting anybody who's interested to the, we have a solicitation training and grants pass on the 19th, of October. And it's from 10 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock, maybe 3:30 in the afternoon. Lunch is provided. You do have to sign up. If you're interested, you can email me or get Cheryl, and it'll be a lot of information. So if you want Cheryl to go and give you an update, that would be good too, but you're welcome to come. We're going to be going over the 5310, 5311, STIF discretionary, also some Optus and our applications during the training. We will have several options for, you could do it online if you wanted, or in person in Grants Pass. Lunch is provided.
Not on Zoom.
And,
Is that the 18th?
it is next Wednesday.
Oh
So
my.
what is that date?
Monday.
Yeah,
The
19th.
19th, like she said.
So the 19th. The applications, as Cheryl said, are discretionary grants. There was a letter of intent that was due today before 5 o'clock. And then, and I saw one come in for Cheryl. I don't know, maybe one or two. I had a whole bunch of them flying in my inbox this afternoon before the end of the day. And then the application itself is due on the 30th of November. You had to put in a letter of interest if you were doing a project other than vehicles. And then if you want to put in for vehicles, you could do that on the date of the application that it's due. From the number of LOIs that I got in, I can just imagine how many other ones. So I think it's going to be a pretty tight competition for the funding, because we have about 23 million or something like that. So, and I probably got in 20 LOIs since last week. So lots of people, and that's just for region 3 and region 2B. Lots of good projects, but not a lot of money as always. And then, as Cheryl said, the applications, the 5310 and 5311 are due on the 20th. Let me see. They're due on the 20th of January, and then the stiff discretion or stiff formula is due on the 16th. So 2 applications due that week. So guess what Cheryl's doing over Christmas vacation? Let's see what else. As Cheryl said, the vehicles, we are trying, all us RTCs are getting requests. People are trying to purchase vehicles, and they had grants and they put in additional money, and now these vehicles are coming back 20 to 40% higher than what they originally had anticipated. So people are finding that their grant applications are not sufficient to provide the funding to purchase as many vehicles. Most of the people had multiple vehicles, so they're having to either cut the number of vehicles or try to find additional funding sources to supplement. We RTCs have asked our supervisor, if there's any way we could try to find some additional funding that we could use to try to supplement the folks that are needing that to fill the gaps. They're still talking about it, but so I'll let you all know if there's anything. I think you had enough in yours, didn't you, Cheryl, that you didn't need additional funding, or do you?
So the difference between what our portion was initially and what it will be now is, it was originally 35,000 and now it'll be 141,000. So we have the funding available, but that's about, I believe it was 40,000 more than if we had initially used the entire grant. And what our match money would be for that. And then there's the additional over, I believe was about 40,000. So I could absolutely turn that into you if that's an option.
Yeah, if we have something that comes down, I will definitely let you know. And then we do have some COVID funding. It was limited on the vehicle purchases. Some of the funding was allowable for vehicle and some was not. So that's an option as well. And I'll keep you updated because we're going to be having another round of COVID funding that's going to be going out in the spring. We did defer the 5304 funding, the planning funding until 24. We had a small amount, and so we are going to go ahead and do that with our other discretionary grants coming up in 2024. So that one is not going to be available. And other than that, we still have a whole bunch of openings at public transportation. We've had interviews. We still have the capital program manager open. We have the compliance coordinator. We have 2 RTC positions, and I think we have a total of 13 positions open in public transportation. So
Are
everybody
you covering all of now that they lost their second RTC?
do what?
Covering all of Region 2 now that they lost their second RTC?
No, we lost Teresa
Yeah, Conley.
Region 4. So I'm
Oh, I thought she was 2. Okay.
yeah, I'm helping with some of Region 4, and so there's 3 of us, and we're all covering multiple regions, but that's all right. It builds character.
It's a good attitude.
That's all I have. If you have any questions, what was I gonna say? The attorney, I can't remember what his, or is he in the insurance? He's the attorney, correct?
Yeah,
So yes, he is spot on the district. If your district is only a portion of your county, then those areas within your county outside of the district, oftentimes they will have like ad hoc type folks on the board, but they don't necessarily have voting privileges. And so RBTD has a small portion, just kind of the center part of the valley for their district, and their members are within that district boundaries.
cool. Thanks, Jennifer. Anything not on agenda?
I'll come back to my report real quick for not on agenda. There were a couple of discussions that I participated in that were of note. One of them was the 5311 funding. So the formula that they use to allocate 5311 funding. Pardon?
I just say For those that are familiar, with what 5311 does, that's the fixed route money.
Oh, yes, the
Yeah.
fixed route public transit. So there's a formula that, if you have expanded your miles and hours of service, the most that you can get is 110% of what you had last year. So you can get what you had last year plus 10%. And so what that has done is it has created, I believe it was $8 million in excess funding. And so they allowed me to participate in a conversation about how to best utilize or distribute those excess funds while still maintaining a bit of like a safe.
Safety net.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, if we had new starts, we'd have that money for that new start to take over.
Yeah, so there were like 4 or 5 districts throughout the state that were exponentially lower than if they were to be funded just based on miles and hours. We were way lower than what we would be if we weren't capped at the 110%, as were a number of other ones. There were also a couple of others that they were looking at being funded at less than 100%, which would then in turn kind of cripple them because it wouldn't allow them to dig out. And so was very interesting. What I put out there is that was super exciting that they're gonna bring us closer to whole, because that was what they were talking about. Do we just make everybody whole and then go from there, or do we do these other options? And so there were some pretty straightforward options put on the table, and then he presented it to PTAC. And there were additional options on the table that were a little bit more convoluted, and I didn't thoroughly understand them. But just long story short, we're going to get at least 200,000 more in 5311 funding than what we have been getting. It could be a greater number.
As like a permanent thing.
Yeah, that's
or
my
like
question.
a one time.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
bring us closer to whole, and then we'd still be able to get the 110% each time that they do it. But they're looking at doing a reset every couple of bienniums. So instead of every 2 years, maybe every 4 years, look at them all and get people reset so that we're not falling behind like that.
And the board that hasn't changed since I started working here, so that's 5 years that it's been the same. And so that's part of the problem with that excess. One of the things though, that there was discussion after the PTAC meeting, Cheryl, sorry to interrupt, but
Okay.
they're trying to determine when the funds will be released, because right now, this discussion came about right before the solicitation materials were released. And so they're trying to figure out how to make people whole without creating a whole bunch of problems, because a lot of people have already done their budgeting. We also don't have, the earliest that they can take it back to PTAC is not until November, which then we're getting right on the tail end of the time that the providers have to have their applications in. So there, from what I was gathering, and I, don't quote me on this because we don't have a firm information on what we're gonna do, but it kind of sounds like it'll be a mid-year. So it'll be mid-cycle, so probably not until December, January of 2024, unless they can really get PTAC and the numbers people together and get moving on it. But there will be definitely additional funding that's coming, and that's why it's really important to, when you guys start planning your 5311, projects, to put additional projects in there. So you're doing more like 120% or 130% of what you have, so that if you do get those monies, then you can just start programming those projects.
Yes, so the other discussion that I got to participate in was the innovative mobility discussion. And that kind of stems over to what Matt had spoke about in the beginning of the meeting. So the innovative mobility is, right now they have micro grants of $5,000 a piece that are available right now. But then there are other solicitations that we can apply for, but we need to figure out what is the project that we want to do. Because what they're talking about is just what Matt had spoke to, is the populations that are typically underserved. So how do we create a project that is going to meet the needs of those people that is still public transit that we can either manage ourselves or make somebody a contractor to be able to manage it for us. So some of the things that had come up were bike share, or like the electric scooter share, those kinds of things that will meet that first mile, last mile challenge that, well, in our county, it's like the first 20 miles and the first 20 miles.
Yeah.
But specifically it says innovative mobility, and that is my brain is kind of mush for I've been so focused on how do we put out there, just what we have. How do we walk through all of the grants that we have right now and get them executed and everything built next door and all of that stuff working. So innovative hasn't been in my head. So anything that you guys can think of that would be workable that we could do. I'm just kind of at a loss for what could we do, that falls within the guidelines. So I can send you the information and see if you have any thoughts on it.
Yep, good, yeah.
Yeah.
I do think you want to be careful of not overstraining your staff resources.
Exactly.
When you're trying to, get this going, and that's gonna take maybe a lot more than you think it will.
Yes.
To get that developed, so just
Yes.
I'd be a little wary or mindful, I guess, of that.
So the other thing is the letter of intent. I kept it really simple for the stiff discretionary. And it's for the technologies that we've been discussing need to be either upgraded or added. That there is a fairly simple and inexpensive fare technology that would allow for the contactless fare for people to be able to purchase their passes online.
I think just even electronic fare collection is probably one of, who carries cash anymore?
Right, well, that's what I mean,
yeah.
cashless, yeah.
Yeah, you can use your debit card, or you can swipe your watch or whatever, and
Yeah.
card and just access it, and it pays the exact fare instead of giving the extra donation.
Yeah, so I put in for a full-time IT person to be able to manage the IT projects that we want to come into into the district, like software for the dispatch, the tablets that would go in all of the vehicles for the vehicle location. So we know where all of our buses were at all times, as well as the demand response vehicles. That would tie into the passenger facing app that would tell them when their bus is going to be there in real time. And we already have some of the pieces on our vehicles to be able to do these things. So it's just tying in the correct software and getting the rest of it together to make it happen. There again, I know that I can't be that person, and there's nobody on staff that I could spare that can focus 100% on that. And so that's why I put the IT person into that project, because it needs to be somebody that can be here, that understands transit, that we can ask questions, that they can ask questions, that's, you know, just integrated, not somebody that we call every now and then to work on something. They would be part of the installation process, part of fine tuning to make sure that these things work, and just getting it up and running. And there are all things that were identified in our ODOT information technology assessment. And we sat here at the table going through all of these things, and they went, wow, you guys really are starting at the beginning. So I'd recommend prioritizing. So they're all pieces of software and technology that were identified that we need to move forward. So that's what I put in for technology.
Fair.
We're almost back to public comment. Any other not on agenda item? Okay, public comment. Matt.
So Cheryl, I'm just following up with your comments. It sounds like an IT person would be great for high-tech solutions. However, we're in a rural district with a lot of people who are not tech savvy, don't want to be tech savvy. You're talking again, you know, a population I'm very familiar with, people with disabilities and elders. And how are you going to provide low tech options for these folks so that they get that kind of accessibility that would otherwise be done through some sort of high tech option?
So our high tech projects that we have are for the function of the district, to make our district function better. The only part that is passenger facing is the next bus technology, the automatic vehicle location. But the software that we're looking at that will integrate with possibly microtransit, which is something that we've been looking at as a solution for some of these things. But that innovative piece of what people need, that's what I need input. If you have an idea for a project, let me know what it is. And that's what I need.
I know lots of my people have no smartphone. They got a flip phone.
Mhm.
They want to talk to somebody on the phone, and cashless is not in their vocabulary.
Right.
They don't want the government tracking them. Lord knows.
So that's about 40% of our ridership. The rest of our ridership wants to be able to,
Yeah.
purchase their fare on their way to the
Having
bus stop.
alternatives is a big thing.
But you can buy tickets sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
right at the bus stop, you know, so just be able to have that instead of having to be on your, at home and do it online.
So we're not getting rid of this technology, we're just adding.
Yeah.
it to it.
Add tracking,
Well, that-
will they have the option to call on automated?
She's in her 70s.
Like
and
before
she-
last-
She's very.
For
good.
smartphone, I
For a 70-year.
knew the number to
Yeah,
call
my
from
mom
it.
can build
before I was
a computer
operating
by
that.
herself, but
And you look at the stop and show your bus stop
doesn't want the
ID.
government.
Yes.
telling which
And
one.
if you didn't know that, you could look on the internet to find out,
That's right.
like the intersections. And then you call it up and it says your bus is gonna arrive whenever.
Rusted.
Most times it's inaccurate, but it's still helpful. Yeah, like in the snowstorm or something, it'd be like, oh, in 40 minutes, and you call an hour later, 40 minutes.
It's still 30 minutes.
But it's still helpful, I mean.
Yeah.
gives you something.
Yeah.
But that way the person.
So it sounds like you're really looking for input as far as the innovation, either
Yes.
low tech or high tech. Input.
Yes, definitely need input, and if an email is optimal simply because I am often inundated, and so the email is what I go back to remind me, okay, what was it specifically that we wanted to do here? And there are grants available, micro grants and then larger grants, and the funding is available through 2023, I
I was
think
gonna
is
say, I
the,
think this is just a pilot project.
yeah,
Remember, that innovative mobility,
yeah.
Yeah. I think
that
it's
new
just a
funding
pilot
is just a
from-
pilot project.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, so it would be a one-time funding option to get something set up. So, yeah. Yeah,
Are we looking at additional bus shelters to a grant for shelters?
we are.
I just see lots of people waiting outside in certain
We need
locations and, yeah.
And the weather's getting worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've got an elderly man that brings his folding chair and sits out in front of the Roseburg Mall area. Right there across from the,
Throw over the cooler, the one that we got
Walmart.
booted out in front of the library, put back on the table then. That's-
Okay. Yeah, that's still in my list, so yes, we could absolutely do that.
So Cheryl.
Yes.
Just to kind of follow up with the low tech stuff. Just off the top of my head, doing some form of outreach. I mean, grassroots kind of stuff would be the alternative. If you're going low tech, you're gonna be basically,
We're actually
Always
working on
set
that now.
okay,
We have some, well, we just completed a travel training video. So that's something that we'll have available to show people that and it has subtitles in Spanish that Christine was able to go through and she's like, well, I guess it gets the point across, but it's
It does.
yeah, so she went through and edited the Spanish subtitles for us to where it actually says the
makes sense.
message the way that.
How do I
it's
sound in
supposed
Spanish?
The same way you look.
I speak Spanish.
to. Yes, we're working on some of that.
okay, so with the video, maybe low cost bus passes that get out to people in vulnerable location, care
So,
facilities, that kind of thing.
yeah, are you aware that we changed the prices of the passes and the fares?
No, that
So,
is not something that's part of whoever your communications person is. They could do a better job getting the word out.
well, it's in the on the radio, in the newspaper and online.
Right,
And-
and for our population, $1, $2, it could be $500. Some people just don't have the money, so.
Yeah, I was really holding out for I was holding out for no.
Right.
So
fare.
seniors.
There is still a need for that
Yes.
demand response style ride, style of transportation stuff.
Mhm.
Because you have a population that lives and dies by that, hopefully not die too much.
Die
Because
sometimes.
you want them to get to where they need to go, which are typically doctor's appointments, dental appointments, mental health appointments. So, yeah, it would be good to have that kind of accessibility. And if there's a way for that stuff to get closer to them, because they won't want to travel, let alone use a phone app.
Yeah, that's why we're talking about micro transit, where you have basically a circular person going through a small area to pick up people, to take them, you know.
And that works great in a startup sense, but if you're looking at doing an infrastructure build, which is what this funding sounds like it's there for startup on ideas, then I'd say as long as you've got your high tech, just make sure you include your low tech and make sure that it's paired up. Like that video would be great along with, by the way, since you're into this, would you like to buy, a cheap pass?
So we are going to be doing travel training on site for a number of agencies throughout this next year. So that's on the agenda. We're just working towards it.
Yeah, I've noticed a number of care facilities around here that normally have their own little transit system, a van or a bus. They're still dealing with post-COVID situations and a lot of them are not running. Not because they're not available, they're just, it's not cost effective. So.
Or they don't have drivers.
They don't have drivers.
Drivers was the part before COVID.
Okay.
So you got a lot of folks that are stuck in care facilities like Callahan Village, Garden Valley, that would love to probably get out and go to the mall.
Well, generally that's on the care facilities and their activities director people. I worked in one for years and we had an activities person and that's kind of their thing
Right.
is rounding everybody up and taking them where they want.
Well, my mom's currently at Rosehaven and has friends at Callahan Village and I mean, they talk scuttlebutt. So on Sundays, I go visit my old math. And she was giving me all the 411 on the shenanigans at Callahan, and they lost their activities director.
Gotcha.
Actually, the situation, I guess, that she decided to go find better work.
Okay, agenda build. Next meeting, we have. We didn't hold anything over from this one.
By next meeting, we'll probably have an update on the first staff meeting,
Okay,
update on the projects that have been submitted and the projects that we're gonna submit.
Do we need to fill any vacancies? And we do have Jim's vacancy now on the budget committee.
Yeah,
The budget committee is a board member now, Jim.
oh yeah, we have to replace you
Shit.
already. I suspect we do. We still had open places before we. Yeah. I just have to look it up. Definitely.
Where do we advertise for those?
So we haven't really advertised. It's just something that has been on our website. There's an application for it. But we do have an advertising contract that we could actually put it out on the radio and put some little skit together that's 30 seconds that says, hey, do you want to be on the Special Transportation Advisory Committee that helps determine where the transit dollars get spent?
And do we have that with the newspaper as well?
Mhm.
We could do that.
Mhm.
And what was the third avenue?
Online clicks. So apparently if you go online, there are spots that you can click like a button that will take you from the ad that you're reading directly to a website, something like that. I'll ask more questions the next time.
You can target on Facebook and stuff too, so people get on Facebook, then these ads will pop up on their things and they can click on it from there and go to the stuff.
Facebook ads were really weird.
Yeah.
They like bill you by the day, and like one of my bills was for 11 cents. It's just odd, and you have to have a credit card connected to it, and I was very leery about connecting our company card to that. So
I
Yeah.
did them too.
I did it.
Lots of people that have been hacked by.
Facebook,
buying
you do that all the
stuff on
time.
Facebook.
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm done.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? We are adjourned at 7:10.
7:10.